I'm Mark Antonation, and I'm the food and drink editor at Westword. Well, I've always been interested in food and writing, but until a few years ago, I had never put the two together. A friend of mine had encouraged me to do some freelance food writing, and so I was doing more drinks writing, and at the same time I was kind of bored with my job as a technical writer, so I was reading a lot online, and especially Westword, and sending in comments, so I was a troll. But Patty Calhoun, the editor-in-chief at Westword, liked what I was writing, so she asked me to come write for them, and I initially was doing just a once-a-week freelance piece where I wrote about every restaurant on Federal Boulevard, from Hamden to I-70, and that took me a year and a half, and then after that I started full-time. Well, as the food and drink editor, my job is kind of to keep track of the news that's happening in the restaurant world, and just to discover what's out there. It's a huge city, and we cover beyond just Denver. We cover all the suburbs. So there's always something interesting to find, whether it's, the newest restaurant or old favorites or places changing hands. There's always something to do. Well, the Federal Boulevard trip was definitely a good one, because the reason I even thought of it is because I live just a couple blocks off Federal Boulevard and would drive every day and wonder what was being served, and I thought, well, what better way than to just eat at all of them. It just exposed me to a whole different way of thinking about food in terms of, who owns these places, why have they been there, the way they are with, all the Vietnamese restaurants, good Mexican restaurants, and a few other places scattered in between. It was just really a lot of fun. Well, hopefully it'll continue to represent Colorado and not absorb too much outside influence. I mean, we always need fresh blood, but I think, doing what we know how to do and excelling at that, and getting better and better at that, I think is important. And there's just so much good food, being grown and made here, that we can, show the world all about Colorado. Well, I guess the number one thing is selling food. The word community, I always think is kind of a buzzword that's being maybe a little overused, because it's not just about selling food to people. It's about, how are you participating in your neighborhood? Do you know your customers? What are their lives like in the community? And then things like, what are you doing to maintain the city and recycling and eliminating waste and providing good opportunities for employment with good wages? I think that's the community part of it. Overall, I think, becoming a part of Denver is the most important thing. Well, 4 years doesn't seem like very long, but the summer I started was the year that Union Station reopened, and I think that's a good marker of what Denver is doing now. It's like, it's exciting, it's new, but it's based in history. We're combining these great old buildings with new restaurants and new food, and it's all just really fun, and watching that grow over the past 4 years. I mean, it seems crazy as we're in the midst of it, and probably some people are a little afraid of where it's going, but I think it's really exciting. I moved here when I was 16. I live mostly in Texas, but my parents were Canadian. They're now American citizens. But we lived in London and Libya and California before that. And so I've kind of been around, and I think that's part of the reason why I like food so much is because I got to experience a lot, and my parents always had friends through my dad's job that were from all over the world, so I got to try different kinds of food when I was pretty young. I managed a pizza restaurant when I was in college, and I was a barista, and then I just love cooking at home, so that's something I got from my parents.
What'd you get?
Well, I'll start with food writing, since that's something I at least have a little bit of experience in, and I would say the important things are, learn everything you can learn about writing and about food. Never stop being curious about either one of those things, and you'll probably do really well. I make it a point to not only learn about Denver restaurants every day, but to keep up with writing in English, because that's my job. Well, it's such an honor, and I was just thrilled and surprised to get this award, and really, I'm the one telling everybody else's stories, so the stories belong to the people in the restaurants, and they're the ones that are doing the great things. I'm just telling about it. Yeah, I think the people I've met in the restaurant world, I'm always amazed at how much energy they all have, and they never seem to sleep, and they're cooking and working on their business, and they're hiring people, and opening new restaurants, and I'm just amazed. I thought that when I started as a food writer, I was overwhelmed with the amount of work I had, but it doesn't even compare to people that run and own restaurants and cook in the kitchen every day, and it's an amazing bunch of men and women, and they're probably all really underpaid. So I just wanted to mention I mentioned my mom and dad and how much of an inspiration they are to me, especially when it comes to food. And they grew up in rural Canada, and my mom grew up on a farm, and my dad's family owned a general store. So, from when I was really young, I just was exposed to the idea that food comes out of the ground and it comes from the animals on the farm, and I got to experience that firsthand, and I think it really shaped the way I eat and the way I see food. So, well, I would say that memorable meals for me are the ones on my grandma's farm, because she would forage wild mushrooms, she would grow her own vegetables, she raised chickens, and my uncles would fish and hunt, and so when we would go there for the holidays, you were just eating everything from around this rural part of Canada that the town was only 200-300 people, and she lived a couple miles outside of that, and so sharing a meal with her again would be amazing.